This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. South Africa's government promises 100,000 new jobs as the country's youth struggle to find work.
Look, I'm at the street, I'm trying to push myself at the end of the day, and nothing is coming up completely.
Campaigning in top gear in Cameroon as 8 presidential candidates face off with incumbent Paul Biya, who's seeking a 7th term in office. They are moving to get a better life in the big cities, but what dangers face these young Ghanaian girls? Also in the program, African Art in London. 154's Contemporary African Art Fair showcases a host of work. We get a sneak peek.
I came round and it was really exciting and fascinating to see art from all over the continent and also from the diaspora.
And in sports, Cameroon's volleyball team have been knocked out of this year's Women's World Championships, currently going on in Japan. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The issue of unemployment and underemployment, 2 words that resonate right across the world, and it's worse in many countries in Africa. This is why South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is hosting a summit in Johannesburg to discuss vital job creation. It's the 4th in 20 years. Now, the country is currently facing a jobs crisis with unemployment over 27%. Now, those aged between 15 and 34 years are twice as likely to be jobless, with 54% out of work. Now, last week, the government announced a $3.5 billion stimulus package to help boost Africa's 2nd largest economy, which is now in recession. Bumani Mkhize has the details.
The people driving by in their fast cars seem a world away from 27-year-old university graduate Brian Radzuma's own tough life. For the past 6 months, he's been desperately looking for a job. Countless rejections and unanswered applications have forced him to take to the streets to beg for work.
Looking for a job.
After completing an honours degree in mining and geology at the University of Venda in the northern part of South Africa, Radzuma thought there'd be opportunities here in the city of gold, Johannesburg. None have come his way. The car fumes and the traffic have made him question if his degree was worth the effort.
I feel like my degree was not worthy at all, because at the end of the day, look, I'm at the street, I'm trying to push myself at the end of the day, and nothing is coming up completely, so I'm trying to distribute the CVs, sometimes trying to knock door to door, but at the end of the day, nothing positive that is coming up, So, that's why I end up feeling like, what, probably this is not even worth it, Sometimes I wasted my time.
With over half of young South Africans out of work, analysts say the education system isn't fully equipping graduates with work-ready skills.
The problem is we don't have a high-skilled population. Through no fault of their own, vast numbers of South Africans get a useless education and have no experience of the world of work. They often live in homes where nobody works or in communities where very few people work.
South Africa's unemployment figures are staggering. Around 27% of the nation's population don't have jobs. And for the youth, that figure is far higher. Most of the nation's jobless live in townships such as these. For South Africa to solve its unemployment crisis, bringing these people into the formal economy is critical.
Lowering South Africa's unemployment rate will be the main focus of the Job Summit hosted by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The summit has set an ambitious target of creating 100,000 new jobs by the end of the year.
The most direct way for South Africans and South African companies to create jobs is to buy only South African products. And this is the time to put South Africa first. This is the time to put South Africans first. And this we say not in an arrogant way, like it is said elsewhere.
For Ramaphosa, the issue of mass unemployment is compounded by an economy that is in recession. With elections coming up next year, Ramaphosa has a tough job convincing a weary electorate that he's the right man to take South Africa forward. Vumani Mkhize, BBC News, Johannesburg.
It's the home stretch, and campaigning is in top gear in Cameroon. This coming Sunday, the people will be voting in one of the most crucial elections. It comes at a time when the government is facing a crisis in two regions, the southwest and northwest. Now, for the past 2 years, an armed separatist uprising has created unrest. Hundreds of civilians have been killed and thousands have been forced to flee. Now, the separatists have vowed to enforce a boycott of Sunday's election. But despite the crisis, campaigning has been going on. Incumbent President Paul Biya is running for a 7th straight term at the age of 85. He faces 8 other candidates, including Joshua Osei of the main opposition Social Democratic Front. Opposition candidates have been trying to galvanize the young population, which is seen as key in the vote. 37% of people in Cameroon live below the poverty line, according to the International Crisis Group. So what do Cameroonians think?
In relation to this election, I'm not proud, first of all. The old guy there, I wasn't even born when he was in power in colonial times. When my daughter gives birth to her child, he'll still be there. But that can't go on, it has to change. The country's in trouble. Look at Bamenda. Over there, it's bad.
I went looking for work too, but there is no work in my country. I was born and I found President Paul Biya in power. Today, I'm 27 years old. He's still here. I also want change. Someone else to come. We also want to see how he will react.
Well, joining me now from Yaoundé is Professor Elvis Ngole. He's a political science professor and current coordinator for the ruling party CPDM. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. Mr. Biya is seeking re-election. It's the 7th time he's doing that. What is he bringing to the table that's different that he could not do all these years that he's been in power?
Yes, as you know, Cameroon is a republic. It has been a republic since 1960, that's 50. It has been a republic for 58 years. You ask, what does he bring into the affairs of state that he has not done in all this while? First of all, he brings into our affairs the wealth and the force of experience. No other candidate, none of the other 8 candidates running for this election have the experience, the wealth, or the force of experience that he has got. Secondly, he brings into the affairs of state a new openness to innovation, a new openness to governance, a new openness to an unknown and a better future. And he brings into it a renewed determination, a renewed determination to face challenges.
Let me bring
and to move forward.
Let me step in here, Professor, because you've sung some huge praises there for Mr. Biya, but we've just listened to some young people, some young Cameroonians who really are not happy. Why should they trust Mr. Biya this time round? I mean, he's been there. This is the 7th term that he's seeking.
Yes, as a republic, you know, it is the people that decide how long you can stay in power. At any time, the people decide, and you know, in a republic, they decide through an election. The young people who are not happy, I think they are free to exercise the freedom to be or not to be happy. I think we understand that in all republics, there are moments when some are happy, some are not happy. But what's important here is that the values of the republic demand of us, whether we're happy or not happy, to allow the people to speak. And if they are not happy, those who are not happy are free to speak on the 7th of October, but those who are happy are also free to speak. The election of 7th of October gives the freedom and the power and the possibility to Cameroonians, young or old, to express their support or their non-support for President Biya.
Right.
That's what the Republic is all about.
Professor, you talk about the values of a country, you talk about the values that he brings to the table, but he's facing a country that is, at the moment, quite divided. What does he plan to do to amalgamate, really, or galvanize the country, really, I should say, and make sure that even the Anglo-speaking regions are with him? Because, well, as you've heard, the separatists plan to boycott the Sunday poll.
Yes, as you know, in all free democratic elections, such as what we're going to have on the 7th of October, every candidate who is runs on the ticket of a political party brings into the competition or into the election the party platform or program, and the manifesto or the party program for this election for President Biya, who is the candidate of the CPDM, is that he wants to solve the problems that have been raised by the people of the Northwest and the Southwest regions of the country. He wants to improve the living conditions and the living standards of the people, all the people. He wants to make sure that justice extends to all the people. He wants to bring social services like water, electricity, and so forth and so on to the greatest majority of the people. He wants to improve on the infrastructure.
Right.
He wants to make sure that he brings people together in a living together.
Right. Professor, I have to cut you short there because I know these are things that you say he wants to do and he's had all these years to do them. But of course, we'll be watching and I'm hoping we'll be speaking to you in the coming days as this election draws closer. Thank you for talking to us. Well, let's now take a look at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. A former commander of the Somali militant group Al-Shabaab says he will contest next month's regional elections. Mukhtar Robow says if he wins the presidency of Somalia's southwest state, he will forge a strong relationship with the government in Mogadishu. The U.S. First Lady Melania Trump has arrived in Malawi, the second stop on her week-long visit to Africa. She visited a primary school in Lilongwe as she continues to promote her Be Best campaign to benefit youth. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Sophie Ikenye. Still to come, we'll hear from a cult hero from Ivory Coast who is now at home in Cardiff City. I'm Sophie Ikenye and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top story on this program, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is hosting a summit in Johannesburg to discuss vital job creation. The country is currently facing a jobs crisis with unemployment over 27%. Now, Ghana is grappling with the growing problem of internal migration. Girls as young as 14 from rural parts of the north of the country make their way to cities where they work as head porters in the markets. But it is a risky business, as Thomas Nadi explains.
A new day, a new hustle for survival. These young girls, mostly from northern Ghana, are head porters, popularly known as Kayai. Rebecca Issa is one of them. She came to Accra 3 years ago.
Sometimes I get $5 a day, sometimes less. It's a very difficult job. Sometimes I feel pains all over my body and I can't wake up. I always swallow painkillers. I came here because I want to make money to continue my education. I want to also support my family back home.
Rebecca comes from Chirifuyili in northern Ghana. Her mom tells me why she allowed her daughter to go to the city.
We are farmers, and during the seasons, when there are no harvests, we don't have money. So she sends money to support us. During the farming season too, she gives us money to buy planting materials. She has been very helpful.
Many parents in this village feel hard done by poverty, and so they continue to let their daughters to go to the big cities. There are over 2,000 houses in this village, and each household has someone who has either migrated to the cities to seek greener pastures or has returned. And it is widely believed that rural-urban migration in this country from the north to the south started here. In the colonial era, people from northern Ghana were recruited to work in the mines and in cocoa farms. Though the type of trade might have changed, the young girls here are often exploited. They engage in menial jobs, paid less, and sometimes sexually assaulted. Authorities have been struggling to deal with this issue.
some of them are very educated, but because of poverty. So it's like, when we give you money to go back to school, will you be able to go back? If it is a yes, then we'll push them back into school. If it is just a trade that they are doing. But at the point, we want to wean them off the carry because they can't carry forever.
Until such measures are implemented, young girls like Rebecca will continue to rely on this type of trade to realize their dreams. In her case, becoming a nurse. Thomas Nadi, BBC News, Ghana.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport. Peter.
Many thanks, Sophie. We start with volleyball, and Cameroon have been knocked out of this year's Women's World Championships currently going on in Japan. They lost 3-0 to Argentina in their last pool game. The Central African girls had won one of their earlier games and needed to win this one to finish at least 4th in the 16 group to qualify. But they lost to Argentina, who had lost all their 3 previous games. Kenya were the continent's other team in the competition, but were knocked out yesterday. In football, Liverpool say their Ghanaian midfielder Naby Keita is fine after being taken to hospital with a back injury suffered in the 1-0 Champions League defeat to Napoli. The 23-year-old received treatment on the pitch in Italy before being taken off on a stretcher after 19 minutes. Liverpool host Manchester City in the Premier League this Sunday, and Keita has not been ruled out of that game. Keita joined from RB Leipzig for £48 million this summer. He's made 9 appearances for Liverpool this season, including 4 starts in the Premier League. Well, Liverpool lost that game against Napoli by a 1-0 through a 90th minute goal. Keita's international teammate Amadou Diawara was on the bench for Napoli but didn't make it to the pitch. Some good news for the 21-year-old though, as he's been called up to Guinea's national team for the first time for their Cup of Nations qualifiers with Rwanda. Diawara was one of 3 players who pledged their international allegiances to Guinea in March. And speaking of the Nations Cup, one of the biggest questions in African football today is whether Cameroon can be ready to host next year's competition. Concerns have been raised over delays in construction work and the security situation in the country. President Paul Biya this week assured that the country will be ready, and now one former Cameroon international has also backed his country, saying it is set to host the best Africa Cup of Nations tournament ever.
I think everything will be right on time. They're doing well, they're making a big effort. Cameroon, they are working very hard. So I think by the time the Confederation Cup gets, will be the Africa Cup of Nations, it will be one of the best hosted so far. So nobody has to be worried because everything will get on the right time, on the right moment.
Now let's hear from a cult hero at Cardiff City Football Club. Last season, if you had said the team would be promoted to the Premier League, many people would have laughed at you. But the Blue Jays are here and they are singing, led by Sol Bamba from Ivory Coast. He spoke to the BBC's Isaac Fannin.
Been all over, everywhere I played, I had a great time.
As Sol Bamba says, he's played all over, from Italy to Scotland, Turkey to England. But it's in Wales that he's truly found his place.
I can call it home here in Cardiff. And in a way, it's similar because in Africa, if you walk in the street and you see someone, you say hello, even if you don't know him. And it's similar here. People are very friendly, nice, and they make you feel welcome.
Some people describe you as a cult hero.
That's taking a bit far.
I don't know. Like everyone sort of said the same thing. We went around the stadium on Saturday and spoke to a couple of fans, and we asked them sort of what their thoughts are on you. So here's a little compilation of what they had to say.
We're a fan base that really loves players that give their all for the club. We don't want prima donnas. We can't afford prima donnas, even if we did want them.
It's his immediate impact upon the club, on the team, straight away from the outset. There was no leading time for him. He just started at a very high level of play and has continued ever since.
When you see stuff like that, how does it make you feel as a footballer?
Yeah, you actually want me to do more for them. It's always nice to have a fan who like you, but at the same time, it's just you have to make sure you please them.
You were born in Paris, right? Yeah. And so you were born to obviously Ivorian parents.
Yeah.
I was born to Ghanaian parents and I was born in London.
Okay.
My parents, my mum in particular, always said to me, I want you to be a doctor, I want you to be a lawyer. Is that the truth for you? You know, I wanted to be a footballer,
yeah.
but she was like, no, she was not having it.
You know what, funny enough, I didn't want to be a footballer. Mum was saying from a very young age she wanted me to be a doctor. And I was like, why you want me to be a doctor? She said, because I want you to help people.
You may not help people, you know, physically, but you help people in terms of you make them happy when you help the team win, and we saw that in the video.
Absolutely, and that's a good point, to be fair, it's like, because my mum came here for the last game of the season when we got promoted. And bless her, she, after the game and all the celebration and all that, we went back home. And she sat me down in the garden and she exactly said that. She said, you know, doctor, I can see how the people loving you and how you are with them, and that made me proud, so I was happy.
What a great guy. Sophie, did you ever think of being a footballer?
No, but I remember a time when you wouldn't even dare say you were dating a footballer. Things were so much different then.
Now wags are in.
Now things are...
What team do you support in the Premier League?
What team do I support in the Premier League? Man, I shouldn't be telling you that because I know you're an Arsenal fan, so I won't say it. But thanks for the sport, Peter. Don't put me in a difficult position. All right. Moving on. In 154's London edition of its Contemporary African Art Fair begins today. The fair displays some of the finest artwork in the market. Lisa Marie Mishtak has been finding out how much the African contemporary art scene has grown.
154's Contemporary African Art Fair has kicked off its 6th London edition. The fair has grown from strength to strength since its inception in 2013.
I love the interplay of shadows.
Atta Kwame is a Ghanaian painter and art historian who has participated in the fair over the years.
I came round and it was really exciting and fascinating to see art from all over the continent and also from the diaspora, which in a sense interrogates the notions that we have about Africa.
Awareness and accessibility of African contemporary art has been on the rise for years. This year's fair has 43 galleries with works from 130 African and diaspora artists.
So this was my mom, I think, in her early 30s.
South African artist Lebohang Kanye says this art fair is important for representing a variety of art in a new way.
What I'm really enjoying about 154 is the fact that the work does not just become about regional artists. It's not just about it being you being an African artist, but it's actually really good works. It's really good artists that are part of the show.
Price tags for African works of art have steadily been increasing. In February, Bonham's auction house sold work by Nigerian modernist painter Ben Enowu for a record-breaking £1.2 million. With 70% of local art galleries in Africa selling their work internationally, the Contemporary African Art Fair has been credited with boosting artist profiles.
I think it's been very important. It's been breaking lots of artists globally. So I think this has been really a good moment, and it's in need, and there's need to be more of it. And I think that now become more international, and there's a little bit more focus on African art globally.
With a predicted 20,000 people expected to visit this year's fair, it will help give artists the much-needed visibility on the world stage. Lisa Marie Mishtak, BBC News, London.
Great. Before we go, let's take a quick look at the top story today on Focus on Africa. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa is hosting a summit in Johannesburg to discuss vital job creation. The country is currently facing a jobs crisis with unemployment over 20%. Last week, the government announced a $3.5 billion stimulus package to help boost Africa's second largest economy, which is now in recession. Well, that's all from the program. From me and the rest of the team, thanks for your company.